In Texas, we have this blowing statistic, this eye-popping statistic that only about 40%, maybe a little more, but definitely under 50%, under half of all the money that's spent on K through 12 public education in Texas actually goes into the classroom. And that's a pretty broad definition of what we consider to be going into the classroom. The rest of it, more than half, is to administrative costs and so on and so forth. So, and then we're talking about over $100 billion. So it's a 50 some odd $billion, $60 billion industry of things that have nothing to do with what's going on in the classroom here in Texas. What should districts and the states, and schools, what should they be spending their money on?
Well, I think it's more nuanced than just how much money goes into the classroom and not. In simple terms, for me, they should be spending money on effective teachers. And so I didn't give you the exact examples that I was asked about, but I have two others, and one is Dallas, Texas, and the other is Houston, Texas, where there have been dramatic changes in the way teachers are and leaders. When I say teachers, you should always add principals and other leaders in the schools. Dallas dramatically changed the way they evaluated and paid teachers and the way they used them. And what we've seen is that it can have huge impacts on the performance of the schools. Then that was all due to Mike Miles, the plan in Dallas. He left before it was fully implemented, and Michael Hinojosa and others have followed on to actually implement this plan. And I think that we see that Dallas is one of the examples that we should be looking at nationally. But then when the state of Texas took over the Houston School District, Mike Miles was appointed superintendent, and he's there today. And by all the preliminary results, he's doing an extraordinarily strong, making an extraordinarily strong impact on student learning. The number of failing D and F schools in Houston has just plummeted after years of having schools that continuously didn't help their kids.
Mm-hmm. What's driving this growth in the educational administrative state? Is it policymakers putting more and more requirements unrelated to educational performance on these schools? Is it a concerted effort on the part of interest groups to drive up the administrative activities, the programming that we're expecting schools to do? What's at the root of money being siphoned away from teacher training, curriculum, actual education outcomes into the administrative side of school districts?
Well, the simple answer is yes to your questions. We have in many ways developed this system where we run schools by mandates, and we have a compliance-oriented system where people have to continually report that they're not doing bad things to kids, as opposed to being rewarded for doing good things. And partly we need to just flip the system around so that the focus is on student learning and not trying to mandate something that in the 1,200 districts for Texas, it's hard to think of a single rule that applies to all 1,200 districts. We ought to be rewarding performance and success and not others. And of course, every organization seems to have the objective of increasing its size. So we have districts that have central offices that have new ideas that they want to fund, and they systematically do that, and it leads to this administrative bloat.
if I'm playing devil's advocate with some of those arguments, advocates will argue that even if test scores don't rise, some of these additional programs that you referenced, such as, the diversity and equity programs, are a good for students. It improves their self-esteem, their well-being, but basically making a moral argument about spending and the role of the school in the child's life and sense of self. Does that matter? Does that argument actually hold water?
Well, I mean, as we said, talking about curriculum and other things, schools have a big role in our society, and we expect schools to, in fact, bring along the civic responsibilities and sort of general cultural norms of our society. So that's a certain part of it. When it comes to should we spend to do more, or can we just excuse all of the past spending for these things, I'd be happy to listen to those arguments if in fact people measured what we were getting for it and showed that extra money did in fact lead to improvements in various dimensions.
I want to note that, when you talk about successes, you're listing out specific cities and specific districts, in states. You're not saying, the state of Texas did XYZ, or the state of Vermont, or the state of Massachusetts, and that it's really the district level reforms and the district level implementation that makes a difference. That's really difficult in Texas because while the state is run by rock-ribbed conservatives who are pushing for these types of reforms and issues, the districts in the cities are all run by sometimes left-wing lunatics, and so they're who are beholden to the teachers unions or what other forces may be. So you have that issue where we're all looking at places like Dallas that might have done some of these reforms, but a place like Austin will just never do it because they're totally owned by the left wing. What can the states? I mean, are there examples of where states have kind of forced their will on districts? I mean, I hate to do that as a conservative because we always want to make we love local control and we think the decisions are made better at the local level. But when you see this insanity happening, and of course generations of kids who can't read and do math at grade level, still graduating, you just wonder, how do you fix that problem if the locals aren't willing to do the right thing?
Well, I think Texas has done some good things in those dimensions. I'm not up to. We're into, as I say, mandates and compliance, and when we try to come down on top and tell the districts how to do their business, we have to be pretty confident that we know how to do it, and I'm not sure that we always are. The thing that Texas did was it 3 or 4 years ago with HB 3, the school finance legislation, and followed on a bit with HB 2 recently, was design what I think is the right way to proceed because of the politics and the unions and all the other pressures on districts. What was put in place was a grant program from the state that said, if your district wants to develop a reasonable evaluation system for teachers that pays attention to the effectiveness of the teachers, and if it wants to place these teachers where they're really needed the most in their district, the state will give funding to pay any extra for those teachers for a period of time, a limited period. And if you don't think your district can do that, just keep going along the way you've been doing, and we'll give you the same mandates and requirements and so forth. But if you do want to do that, we have some funds for you. And 547 or something districts as of this year have said, well, we want to try out this plan, and we're going to try to do that, where they've gotten agreements within their districts to try to improve how they manage their personnel and their teaching force to try to focus on student outcomes.
You mentioned
real
those,
quick. I just want to commend. No, before you do that, I want to commend you for staying on top of what's going on here in Texas.
Yeah.
I think you're on top of it more than some of our legislators are with our various HB2 and HB3. I just sort of assume you guys out in California, just keep your eyes on the ocean and never look this direction to what's going on in the rest of the country. But that's great. That's really interesting. So you're on top of all that. So sorry. Anyway, I just want to commend him for that.
Oh, absolutely. Good. I was impressed. He's throwing out bill numbers, and I try to purge my brain of them after a legislative session wraps up.